want to get started with the thing before which we do seven realities. Uh, Ashok, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Your voice is echoing. I think you're on in two places. So just mute yourself till you. Yeah, thank you. So I'll read the seven realities: existence, love, sacrifice, renunciation, knowledge, control, and surrender. I give no importance to creed, dogma, caste, or the performance of ceremonies and rites, but to the understanding following. The only real existence, that of the one and only God, the self, every finite self. Two, the only real love, the love for this infinity, God, arouses an intense longing, see, know, and become one with its truth, God. Three, the only real sacrifice is that in which, in pursuance of this love, all things, body, mind, position, welfare, and even life itself, are sacrificed. Four, the only real renunciation is that which abandons, even in the midst of worldly duties, all selfish thoughts and desires. Number five, the only real knowledge is the knowledge that God is the inner dweller in good people and in so called bad, in saint, and in so called sinner. This knowledge requires you to help all equally as circumstances demand without expectation of reward. When compelled to take part in a dispute, to act without the slightest trace of enmity or hatred, try to make others happy with brotherly or sisterly feeling for each one, and harm no one in thought, word, or deed, not even those who harm you. Only real control is the discipline of the senses to abstain from indulgence in low desires, which alone ensures absolute character. Seven, the real surrender is that in which poise is undisturbed by any adverse circumstance, and the individual, amidst every kind of hardship, is resigned with perfect calm to the will of God. Tar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Okay, so with that, our plan today is to read a book called Gift of God. As you know, we read two books. One, a book which is uh, the Heart Journey, the Heart Journey, where we listen to stories and experiences of lovers of Baba. Show you, um,
That's a good selection.
yeah, the Gift of God. Yes. Have you read the book?
No, but I can see that
Beautiful.
if it's on on the Meher Baba Trust, then
Yeah, yeah. So we'll start by reading the slide. I mean, the little bit of about the book on the side. So, um, this it starts with a quote. Avatar Meher Baba inwardly prompted Arnawaz Dadachanji, the author of the book, to write about her life with him some 20 years after he had dropped his body. So, in around 1980s, 1990. Not intending simply to write an autobiography, Arnavas set out to show through the details of her life the way in which Baba awakened her to both love and an understanding that did not come from reading, studying, or being taught. Her words, knowledge, knowledge flowered as love did, straight from the heart. And that quote is from Deborah Mann Smith and Nancy B. Paul. So now let's get to the book. So there is this is almost autobiographical. So we'll know more about who Arnawaz is. We all might have seen photographs of her in so many of the photographs where Baba, Mera, Mani are there. She is either as a small girl, younger than the rest of them, but she's been there, and I think many of us might have also met Arnavas. So let me start reading. I hope your tech issues are sorted, Ashok.
Yeah, it's sorted now. Is there an echo there? No,
No, no, no. So what happened?
I don't know.
No problem.
Anyway, it was, I think probably joined in two names or something.
Yeah, there was one CA Ashok Bansali and one without passing CA.
Do you want me to read the dedication?
Yeah, sure. That is the dedication. The next page, right? Yeah, please.
Gift of God, dedication to my beloved God Meher Baba and his beloved Mehra, in memory of Nariman, whose love for his beloved Meher Baba was selfless and total.
Nariman is the husband. We'll read more about him. Uh, yeah, okay. So we don't have to read this, but we can start with the dedication here. Yeah, go ahead.
I love you. Do not worry about your weaknesses. Eventually, they will go. Even if they linger, love will one day consume them. Everything disappears in the ocean of love. Because I love you, you have a pool of love within you. When you feel wretched, when you fall in your weakness, have a dip in that pool of love. Refresh yourself in that pool of love within you. It is always there. Even if you wash your weaknesses every day in that pool, it will remain clear. Don't worry. Baba loves you. That is what really matters. Avatar Meher Baba.
So it's basically a poem written or poem or quote written by Baba. By the way, good to see you, Kama, and good to see you, Praveen. Is that Praveen from Oman?
Uh, yes, yes, Karthik. Yeah, it's me,
Oh, okay. I
Praveen.
was not sure from the name. Good to see you.
I'm muting myself because you'll have some disturbances here. Okay.
Yeah, 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 sure, sure. And if you feel like you're comfortable reading, unmute and say so anytime. Yeah, so we can start with the preface. Ashok, if you're comfortable reading.
Yeah, I'm comfortable. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. Gift of God. Preface. Beloved Meher Baba, the avatar of the age, gave me a supreme gift, the highest gift any soul can receive from the God man, the opportunity to live with his physical form in as close proximity from childhood as one would with one's loving mother and father. How can I express what the gift has meant to me? How can I explain? As beloved Baba said, God is not to be understood but to be experienced. All I can offer in this book is my experience of living my life with Him. Meher Baba captured the hearts of all my family when I was only 8 years old. From the first moment we saw his beautiful form, we were spontaneously drawn to him, and he gradually deepened our faith and developed our understanding of his ways. My life with Baba shows clearly how he draws himself his chosen ones, who knowingly and even unknowingly yearn to be with him. Throughout the years, beloved Baba brought everyone in my family closer and closer into the orbit of his perfect love. Baba's love and grace were his gifts, not only to us, but to all the fortunate generations of Dadachanjis who have since been born with a deep connection to and abiding love for the God man. Some might say that I dedicated my life to beloved Baba, but really speaking, it was he who determined that for me. None of us has the capacity to do anything for or give anything to the highest of the high. He comes down as the God man to our level, and he is the only one with true dedication. He dedicates his supreme self not only for humanity, but for stones, animals, and everything else in the universe. It is he who does everything. It is Baba's grace, love, and compassion which gives us to place our hands in his, trusting him to lead us wherever he wants us to tread and travel. Baba told us to be natural with him, yet, yet he expected us always to hold him in the highest respect. He said, I come down to your level, but never bring me down to your level. Baba gave us the human side of God in order to show us how to love, sacrifice, suffer, be practical, and serve. Throughout all, Baba's purity and divine shone through his humanness. But sometimes when we became forgetful, he would have to say to us, remember, I am God. There was no exact moment when I accepted Baba as all in all. Over time, he was to be my mother and father, and my companion and my one true friend. Being with Meher Baba and following him as a natural and spontaneous process of sorry, being with Baba was following him was a natural and spontaneous process for of growing spiritually. By growing spiritually, I mean learning to love God as he should ultimately be loved. Beloved Baba taught me to give my all to him and to live my life for him while being while living a normal life in the world. This then is the story of my loving Meher Baba. Although I wanted to resign to Baba's every wish, my human weaknesses stood in the way. In his loving compassion, Meher Baba said, I accept each one of you as you are with all your weaknesses. And he gradually led me to obey and surrender to him with rock like faith that eventually awakened love. This foundation of love enabled me to make the Herculean effort that was necessary to overcome my weaknesses and endure the pain and suffering that ultimately brought down brought about detachment within me. It was beloved Baba who prompted me to start working on this book. Although years earlier I had completed a very rough manuscript about my life with him, I had put it away, thinking that my family or someone else might do something with it after I died. Then in October of 1991, I was about to go to bed one night when a voice within me said, your time is short, print your book. I said to myself, oh Baba, there is so much work to be done, and I haven't the physical or mental energy to complete the task. I don't even have a title for the book. And the voice said, Gift of God. I immediately remembered a scene that had taken place 25 years earlier. One evening in 1967, Baba was sitting on his bed in Mehrazad before retiring, and his beloved Mehra and I were alone with him. In the midst of our conversation, dear Mehra had suddenly asked Baba, what is the meaning of Arnawaz? Baba replied, Gift of God. Tears welled in my eyes, And in the great force coming from Baba to me, I had felt that he was telling me more than simply the meaning of my name. As I contemplated that distant moment with Baba and Mehra, I knew the eternal beloved had given me yet another gift, and I had to respond to his wish that I share with others the story of my life with him. I offer this book, hoping that lessons I learned over the years, obedience, surrender, detachment, will be of benefit to those who read who read about them, and my words that bring comfort to those who are struggling to please the God man.
Hmm. That's a good setting to start the book.
Yes, it sets the
Introduction.
context.
You're okay to
Introduction.
continue? Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
you want me to continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Introduction. Avatar Meher Baba inwardly prompted Arnawaz Dadachanji to write about her life with him some 20 years after he had dropped his body. Not intending simply to write an autobiography, Arnawaz set out to show through the details of her life the way in which Baba awakened her to both love and understanding that did not come from reading, studying, or being taught. In her words, knowledge flowered as love did, straight from the heart.
I think we have lost Ashok. I'll continue. No, knowledge, I'll read the last line again. He had dropped his body, not intending simply to write an autobiography. Arnavaz set out to show true details of her life, the way in which Baba awakened her to both love and an understanding that did not come from reading, studying, or being taught. Her words, knowledge flowered as love did, straight from the heart. In her early years with Meher Baba, Arnavaz imagined living as an ascetic, thinking that true renunciation had nothing to do with life in the world. Certainly, her dreams would never have included a husband and a lovely apartment in Bombay, yet this was exactly what Baba had ordained. And in resigning herself to his will, she found her life's meaning in serving him through all the routine details of the daily living. Because Arnavaz lived in the world, most of us will find much to relate to as we read her story. It's a good deal easier to imagine making arrangements to meet Baba and the Mandali at the train station, or cooking and cleaning in preparation for one of his visits, than it is to say to imagine accompanying him on the new life. In reading about Arnavaz, we see that through the ordinary, smallest of circumstances to the most difficult crisis, he learned the lessons essential to spiritual life: obedience, love, resignation, surrender, understanding, and ultimately detachment. Certainly, we cannot emulate the specifics of her life, but in the end, there is only one story of the soul's journey to God. While the circumstances of the journey are unique to each person, the same thematic notes are always present. From her first lesson in literal obedience, Arnavaz grew more and more determined to please Baba. As she kept her focus on him, learning to pay attention to seemingly unimportant details, her life itself became an act of devotion. Arnavaz describes the process. You cease caring about what you want, you stop struggling with what is, remain open to all possibilities, and you become completely one to his work. This is not to say that she escaped worry, grief, or the disappointment and loss that all human beings must endure along the way, but she shows us how Baba gradually brought about detachment. That Baba asks his lovers to abandon their own will and to seek his, and the way in which Arnavaz bowed to his wish and thus became resigned to his will can serve to inspire all who are struggling to love Baba as he should be loved. The internal order that Baba gave Arnawaz to write her book came at a time when when she wanted simply to bask in her relationship with him. Fulfilling this unexpected responsibility has been a constant struggle in the face of her declining health and advancing age, not to mention the demands placed on her by an ever increasing number of visiting Baba lovers who seek her comfort and advice, knowing they can discuss with her their most intimate problems. The time that Arnavaz has devoted to this manuscript exemplifies her absolute surrender to Baba. She has told her story because beloved Baba asked her to, and the result is truly a gift of God. Written by two of them, Deborah Mance Smith and Nancy B. Wall, August of 1994, and both of them were the ladies who were quoted on the website as well, which we read before we started the book. Okay, the Gift of God, Chapter 1. So, what happened to you, Ashok? I thought you were there, and then you suddenly your voice dropped off.
Apologies, Baba, and my apologies to the group. Something just happened. I mean, without my doing anything, I just got cut off. I take it as Baba's wish.
The mysteries of Baba and Ashok's internet,
I
or
don't know.
should we
Yeah,
say the continuing mysteries of
I don't know.
yes.
You can probably write a book on that.
Yes.
You
So
want me
if
to?
you're okay, you can read. Yeah, you can read.
Yes, yes.
Please.
And my apologies to all, and Baba, of course. I don't know
Great.
what happened. It may be his wish. Okay. Gift of God, chapter 1. No one requires an introduction to me, for no one is a stranger to me. Meher Baba.
Beautiful line.
I'll read it again. No one requires an introduction to me, for no one is a stranger to me. Meher Baba. Can I request you to highlight it?
I'm doing that. Yeah, go ahead.
Very profound.
You can continue.
Anyway, the story of my life with beloved Avatar Meher Baba begins with my uncle Arnawaz N Dadachanji. He was one of Meher Baba's early mandali, a term Baba used to refer to his intimate disciples, as he served as the first link in the ordinary chain connecting all the members of my family to Baba. In a sense, the story starts on Christmas Day 1916 when my uncle Framerose, at the age of 23, was married in a double wedding with my parents. After a few years, however, his wife left him for his best friend, a medical student. The family warned Framrose of his friend's visit to his home while he was at work, but my uncle was so good hearted and trusting that he suspected nothing. He loved his wife and he was heartbroken when she left. In those days, divorce was something quite unheard of, considered disgraceful. So disgraceful that when my grandmother heard talk of divorce, she spoke of taking her own life. Fortunately, my brother and father and his brothers were able to persuade her that a divorce would be wise in these circumstances so that Framrose would be free of any responsibility for his wife's actions. The divorce was granted in 1920, simply adding to my uncle's misery. Framrose's career was also beset with misfortune. While managing the Globe Cinema in Bombay, he had become interested in owning a theatre. He left his job and entered into a partnership, becoming co-owner of another cinema house called the Madeline. They showed good movies from Hollywood and social dramas as well as quality Indian films depicting the lives of Ram and Krishna. There was a
Let's
photograph. You would
see
like
that.
to go back?
Yeah, yeah. Let's see that photograph. Yeah. Bridge of science. That's
My
this is
uncle,
Framboise.
yeah, Framrose Dadachanji on extreme left, and at the entrance of the Madeline Cinema in Bombay, 1923.
There's the sign here, Cinema Madeline, I think.
Yes,
Here
yes.
it's, yeah, right.
Outwardly, the business appeared to be flourishing because there was always a full house. Actually, the cinema was running at a loss because the partner was embezzling the profits. Again, Framrose's trusting nature seemed to be failing him. His partner finally absconded with what cash there was, and my uncle had to borrow money to pay off large debts. Framrose, who was very honest, had many trusting friends. One of them convinced my uncle could never fail him, lent him some money, but when time proved Framrose unable to repay the loan, the friend was very angry. He refused to believe that my uncle was really in debt and accused him of not wanting to repay the money. Uncle Framrose became increasingly frustrated, sinking into an overwhelming depression about the course of his life. Not only was his marriage over and his business partnership a fraud, but now he was hopelessly in debt. Concluding that life was not worth living, he decided to commit suicide. And one day, with this thought in mind, he went to Chopati beach to throw himself into the sea. I was not there to witness the incredible beginning of my family's connection to our beloved Meher Baba, but I can imagine my dear uncle sitting alone on the almost deserted beach, staring in despair at the ocean, unaware that his destiny was about to change, ordained by one he had never met, never heard of. On that very day, Meher Baba and a few of his mandali, including a friend of Framrose's, Nawal Talati, was strolling on the same beach. Baba saw my uncle, a solitary figure in the distance, and sent Nawal to find out who the man was and what he was doing. As Nawal approached, he recognized Framrose and asked, as Baba had ordered him to, "What are you doing here?" My uncle, not wanting to know what he was planning, replied that he was just sitting on the beach. Nawal returned to Baba and told him that he knew Framrose and he was a very unhappy man. Baba said, "Bring him to me." And when Nawal went back and briefly told my uncle about Baba, he got up and followed his friend. Approaching Baba and looking into his eyes, Uncle Framrose experienced such a surge of love and compassion that his thoughts of suicide vanished. When Baba told him to come the next day to Bharucha building in Dadar, where he was staying, my uncle was so overwhelmed by feelings he did not understand that he found himself instantly agreeing. All he knew was that he felt totally committed to Baba, whose beauty and magnetic personality had stirred his heart so deeply. The next morning, Baba didn't wait for Uncle Framrose to come, but sent Nawal to bring him from his house. Baba, who observed silence from 1925 until the end of his life, was still speaking at this time. And when Framrose arrived, he asked my uncle if there was anything he wanted to say. Baba's compassion was so powerful that Framrose would not contain his troubles, and he poured out his heart and soul to Baba, who took my dear uncle in his arms. Framrose felt so renewed that he did not want to leave Baba. In Baba's presence, his painful past disappeared, and his spirit was uplifted with a love that filled him. When Baba asked him, will you do what I tell you? My uncle said that he would. Baba said, "Leave everything and come to me. Join my ashram near Ahmednagar. Your love for your wife is only Maya. I will show you the highest type of love. Tramrose agreed immediately. Baba then instructed him to wind up his business so that he would be completely free. Of course, Baba gave him some time to do this, but he began my uncle's spiritual training immediately. At this time, also Baba began calling him by the name of Chanji. So Baba had given him the name of Chanji, is it?
Yes. No, I mean, it's just short, right? Yeah.
Not, yeah, yeah.
But there are two Chandis. I don't know which one is this. So keep going.
Yeah. For quite a few months, my uncle went back and forth between Bombay and Mehrabad, Baba's ashram. Baba also visited Bombay and one time took his men and women mandali to Chanji cinema to have a meal there. Exactly at the time the show was over and the rest of the crowd was leaving, Baba and his mandali entered the gates and made their way inside the cinema with big vessels of cooked food on their heads. Because of stringent restrictions Baba placed on the mandali, allowing them only one or two sets of clothing and few amenities, the men looked somewhat unkempt with their unshaven faces and worn clothes. The women had white scarves tied around their heads, so they looked old fashioned and funny. Chanji felt embarrassed as he led Baba and the mandali through a crowd of curious onlookers. For Chanji, this was the first of many lessons in humility. One day, during the same period, Chanji was walking through the street when he saw the friend who had lent him money. Chanji tried to cross the street in order to avoid a meeting, but the man saw him and called out. Although Chanji was nervous, he could not avoid a confrontation. To his surprise, his friend apologized for his past abuses, embraced Chanji, and said, "Do not worry about the money. You are my good friend. I know that if you had it, you would definitely pay me back." Chanji felt that his friend's change of heart was somehow a gift from Baba, and his faith in and surrender to Baba increased all the more. Our family was initially worried when Uncle Chanji joined Baba in 1924. We were Zoroastrian, recognizing only Baba and Zoroaster, his prophet, as worthy of worship. And we had no understanding of the concept of master or guru. When Chanji tried to explain the family, when Chanji tried to explain the family, could neither comprehend these ideas nor accept them. But after all, that all that happened to they wanted him to do whatever made him happy and never. Sorry, 1 second. There's some.
Two things by the stroke by time he comes is we are talking of the period that Baba was talking,
Correct.
1916 and all that. And even
1920s.
in those, yeah, 20s, and even in those, there was something called old fashioned. That
What
was
what
really
what is that?
that. Even in those times, there was something called old fashioned. He writes
Ah,
now old fashioned clothes.
Okay,
absolutely.
okay.
On a lighter note, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sorry about
Yeah.
that. And also, he's so fortunate that Baba was speaking at the time. I mean,
True.
he's among the very few moments where people could hear his voice. And although Baba speaks even after he dropped his body by, you know, giving the name of the book, so this is really very, very interesting.
Chanji was the first secretary and he dropped his body, I think, 1930 or 31 in Kashmir. So he's the same person we are talking. Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Chanji. Dadachanji was the full surname and fondly called Chanji.
Fondly called, and he was the one buried. I mean, he was he the one who uh, dropped his body in
In
Kashmir?
Kashmir.
No. Yeah,
Kashmir,
yeah.
Kashmir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm quite sure, but as we read,
Yes,
we'll
yes.
get to know. Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Karthik,
Okay.
can you go back because the line is truncated? Can we read from the start? I'll read this line again.
Yeah.
But after all that had happened to him, they wanted him to do whatever made him happy and never interfered in his going to live with Baba. In early 1927, my father, who was a building contractor, was asked to construct a hostel for an engineering college in Pune. I was 8 years old when the family went to stay there. Uncle Chanji, who had then lived in the ashram for 3 years, was anxious for all of us to meet Baba. This is a photograph when she was 8 years old.
Right.
I was 8 years old when Baba was that when I first met Baba. Yes.
Okay.
He was
Maybe you can
delighted
read
when.
another page or two, and then we can rotate if you
Yeah, yeah,
find.
okay. Absolutely fine with me. I'll just read the page or two. Yes. Just let me know. And
Sure.
yeah, great. He was delighted when Baba finally told him to ask us to come from Pune. Chanji, in order to persuade us, suggested that since we were so close to Ahmednagar, about 100 kilometers, we should bring a picnic lunch and come to meet Baba. Although my parents did not understand anything about spirituality or don't know the significance of Master's call, the idea of a picnic was very, very appealing to my mother, and my father agreed. Our family included my mother, Bachamai, and my father, Nauroji. My two sisters, Nargis, 4, and Rhoda, 2, my 2-month-old brother, Tempton, and me. We were joined by my paternal grandmother and Meherji Kakaria, my mother's cousin. Meherji was studying engineering in Pune, and Uncle Chanji had also persuaded him to meet Baba. We rented a small bus for the journey, although my parents hadn't told me where we were going. I was very excited by the idea of riding in the bus, which was a rare treat. We started out with our picnic lunch, not knowing the glorious path we were traveling or the ways it would change the course of our lives. We arrived in Mehrabad and entered the building that is now Dharamshala. Baba was awaiting us, sitting on a couch, and we sat around him in a semicircle. From the moment I walked into the room, my eyes were fixed on Baba. He was dressed in a white sadra, and his shining dark brown hair flowed to his shoulders. His radiant face fascinated me. I knew nothing about who Baba was. I didn't even know his name. Karthik, I think there's some issue. My apologies. I again lost the screen.
Is it back?
Not
No,
yet.
no, no. Hold on. I think my bad.
Oh, yeah, it's okay. Baba is testing my patience. Anyway, Jay Baba, apologies. We sat around him in a semicircle.
No,
From the
so start
moment,
from here.
I'm
His
sorry.
radiant face. Yeah.
Yes. His radiant face fascinated me. I knew nothing about who Baba was. I didn't even know his name, but I sat gazing at him with wonder, and he entered the very core of my heart. My young mind had no questions. I did not try to understand who he was. The impact beloved Baba had on me was so strong that day. The memory of his first meeting him is still fresh and alive. Along with being absolutely absorbed in Baba, I remember two incidents from the day. Baba had begun keeping silence and was communicating through the use of alphabet board. Chanji, acting as interpreter, said to my grandmother, Mother, Baba wants to know if you would like to ask him anything. That made me wonder, who is he? Why is he, my uncle, asking grandmother if she has any questions? We had been with Baba for about an hour before he wanted us to have lunch. I remember that we walked across an open field to the old post office building where the women Mandali was staying. As they had cooked rice and dal, lentils for us, we ate what they lovingly prepared and took the untouched picnic lunch, which we had thought would be the higher point of the day, back with us to Pune. These are my memories of my the first meeting of with Meher Baba. My father's diary speaks of the effect Baba had on my parents. Starting from Pune in the morning in a small hired motor bus, we arrived at Mehrabad before noon. We were called in the big hall where Baba was sitting on a low sofa. After inquiring about health and other particulars in great detail, Baba served us lunch and told us thereafter to rest a while. We were to meet him again at 3 p.m. We were made to rest in a detached stone building near the small line, near the railway lines, sorry, and then went back to Baba to be in his august presence. Baba took my newly born son, Tempton, in his hands and caressed and patted him for a while. I was simply gazing at him all the while, looking at his bright, illuminating face, emanating divinity. With a napkin tied around his forehead, his face looked enchanting and his eyes penetrated right into the core of my heart. We were asked to leave for Pune in the evening so that we would reach home before nightfall. My dear wife, Bachamai, was equally affected by the experience of meeting for the first time a divine personality, and for days together we spoke of nothing but him.
Lovely.
I think you can rotate
Sure.
the new chapter.
Yeah. Sanjay ji, if you're okay, otherwise I can read, no problem.
You start, Karthik. I have
Yeah, yeah,
some irritation in my eyes. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, yeah, no problem. No problem. Chapter 2. I do not want anything else from you but the gift of your obedience. Again, a beautiful line. Oh, yeah. I do not want anything else from you but the gift of your obedience, Meher Baba. 10 months later, my father's work in Pune was completed, and we returned home to Rustam Bagh in the Baikalla area of Bombay, where we shared a large third floor apartment with my grandfather, my grandmother, my uncle, and his wife. In those days, joint family living was very common, and with large families being the norm, relatives, friends, and neighbors were always coming and going. After our first visit to Mehrabad, Chanji, to whom the apartment also belonged, began to come frequently with Baba to Bombay. Baba often stayed with us between 1928 and 1933, so whoever happened to be there at the same time got to meet him. On one of Baba's visits, Nariman, my paternal cousin from Karachi, then in India, was also there. He had just finished his secondary education and had come to spend time with our grandparents who hadn't seen him for a very long time. This was Nariman's first meeting with Baba. I remember that he bowed down to Baba as the family told him to, but I don't recall much more about him from that visit. I was 10 and he was 15. I was quite shy and kept away from boys. Most likely, we did not even look at each other, as in those days young boys and girls did not mix freely. We could never have guessed that then what beloved Baba would one day ask of us. Whenever Baba came to our home, my parents would clean and vacate their room for him. Baba never slept on anyone's bed in those days. He carried his own bedding with him wherever he went and would sleep in a corner on the floor. After Baba was made comfortable, we would sit around him, not wanting to leave his side. I remember feeling such joy whenever Baba was in the house. Those were very special times. Baba always traveled with some of the men Mandali, and they, including Uncle Shanji, would be accommodated on the broad enclosed veranda at the front of the apartment where they slept in a row side by side. Baba's Mandali were quite ordinary and down to earth. Their spiritual training didn't involve leading ascetic lives, wearing saffron robes, or meditating cross legged in a corner. Like other people, they did their daily chores, but they had always to remain alert to the rigorous demands of their master, obeying his orders implicitly. Baba's guidance in all aspects of their lives was the source of an inner unfolding which came about through their willingness to obey and serve him wholeheartedly. Sustained by the joy of living in close proximity to Baba, the Mandali were able to bear the difficulties and suffering inherent in such a life. One story concerning Masaji, the name means mother's sister's husband, Baba's uncle and one of his close followers, clearly shows the high expectations Baba had of the Mandali. So, Masaji is Baba's uncle, just so that it's clear. Masaji had been given an order to set aside for Baba the cream that was removed from the milk each day. One day, Baba did not ask for the cream and it remained in the kitchen. About 9:30 that night, Masaji decided Baba must not want the cream, and if he kept it until the next day, it would become rancid as there was no refrigerator. Thinking that the cream should not be wasted, he ate it. Within 15 minutes, Baba sent for Masaji and asked for the cream. Upon hearing Masaji's confession that he had eaten it, Baba did not spare him. He was not new to Baba's ways and should have known better. Masaji had followed his own manner of thinking. His desire to eat cream had superseded his literal obedience of Baba's order, and he was reprimanded very strongly. Baba asked, "Why did you eat the cream? My order was that it be kept for me. Why did you disobey? It is my order that is important. Even if the cream had become rancid, that has nothing to do with it. You are to obey my order." Even those who didn't live with Baba were given the opportunity for his training, but his manner of dealing with new disciples was quite different from the way he dealt with the Mandali. Baba began my mother's spiritual training with a small incident that showed her his wish that she be alert and responsive to his needs. Mother loved to cook for Baba, who was very fond of her masoor, lentils, and we all got to help in some way as she prepared the dal, rice, and vegetable. Baba's habit in those days was to eat very small quantities at frequent intervals, so my mother always had food ready. The latest Baba had ever asked for food was 9. However, she never kept food after that time. Then one night he wanted food at 10. My poor mother stood in front of Baba, terribly embarrassed, and confessed that no food was left. He simply said, "Don't worry." From that day on, however, my mother always had food ready for Baba anytime, night or day. Without giving her a direct order, Baba gently drew from my mother, who was new to his ways, the desire to be ever attentive to his needs. Using different methods appropriate to each person, Baba brought other members of our family closer to him, even those whose devout Zoroastrian beliefs made accepting him difficult. Chanji's father, Hormas Ji, my paternal grandfather, was a very honest and religious man with complete faith in God. Although a Zoroastrian priest, he never practiced in the temple. He was a scholar and teacher who wrote a book used as a Persian text in schools, and his love for the language was such that he held free Persian classes for women in the evenings at our apartment. As a good Zoroastrian, my grandfather believed only in God, the Almighty, and Zoroaster, the prophet. He did not believe that the prophet was God manifesting in human form. Those days, we Zoroastrians hadn't heard the terms perfect master or Sadguru, and saint was the highest designation we had for a person of great spiritual status. Although my grandmother and the rest of us were already bowing down to Baba, grandfather would just shake hands with him, for he sincerely believed that one bowed down only to God and Zoroaster. But despite his beliefs, he respected Baba and never interfered in our relationship with him. Grandfather always seemed quite happy when Baba came to stay with us and lovingly welcomed him into our home. Baba must have been coming to Rustumbad for about a year when my grandfather developed cancer of the esophagus. The cancer advanced until he found it difficult to swallow even water. Hearing of grandfather's condition, Baba sent instructions through Chanji that my mother must feed him fish for 3 days. By that time, mother had tremendous faith in Baba and she managed to persuade grandfather to try to eat the fish. Grandfather loved my mother very much and wanted to please her, but how could he eat fish when he could hardly swallow water? Mother coaxed him, saying that because Baba had said he should eat fish, he should try, even if he couldn't keep it down just for the 3 days. Mother cooked the fish and lovingly tried to feed it to him, even though he had great difficulty getting it down. First day, he threw it all up, and the same thing happened on the second day. On the third day, he was so exasperated that he said, "It's no use, don't give me any more fish." Mother said, "Throw it up, but just eat it." So grandfather took it to please her. Again, he vomited, this time releasing all the foreign matter that had choked his throat. That evening, very weak and thirsty after the ordeal of vomiting, he asked my mother for water. To her amazement, he drank a full glass. Grandfather felt this change in his condition to be a miracle. He allowed my mother to place a locket with Baba's picture under his pillow, where it stayed until he breathed his last. Cancer took his life a month or two later, but because of this experience, he developed faith in Baba, who, in his mercy, allowed my grandfather to feel love for him before he died. Another interesting story about my family and the way Baba developed our faith and love has to do with Dara, my second youngest brother, who was born in 1931. Dara developed double pneumonia when he was 6 months old. In those days, there was no treatment for pneumonia except to apply a poultice of antiphlogiston, a paste that was supposed to draw all the congestion from the lungs to the chest. There was little hope for such a tiny baby to recover. Baba was in Bombay, this time staying in the family of Kaka Baria, one of his mandali. Since Baba had not placed any restrictions on our visiting him, we could go at any time. And when we went for his darshan, my mother told Baba that Dara had double pneumonia. As we were taking our leave, Kakabaria came to us and said, "Do you know what happened? Yesterday, Baba, out of the blue, told me, bring antiphlogiston. I want to apply it to my chest. I've got double pneumonia." Kakabaria knew that Baba did not have double pneumonia, but knowing the unusual ways in which Baba worked and having been trained to obey his every order without question, he brought the salve quickly. Baba applied it to his chest, said again, "I've got double pneumonia, I've got fever, and I got to get well." Dara's condition improved rapidly and he recovered. Kakabaria had not told us this story, we would not have known how directly Baba had intervened to save Dara's life. Within the first year of our meeting Baba, he began calling my father to help with various construction projects, and in 1928, along with some of the men Mandali, he went to Nasik to build a cinema. By February of 1929, they had almost completed it. Baba had recently moved the men and women Mandali from Mehrabad to Nasik, where they would remain for the next 4 years. And that year, there was to be a grand celebration of his birthday. The Mandali wanted to inaugurate the theatre on that day, even though it was not yet ready to show movies. I pause here to ask a question. So, is this Dara the Dara of, I mean, the husband of Amrit, Sanjay? Do you know?
No, I don't think so because this period what we are talking is doesn't rhyme with that. Right?
Okay,
This is that Dara is Baba's brother's son, right?
correct. Oh,
Amrit,
yeah, then it's
Amrit's
surely not.
husband.
Then it's surely
Yeah,
not
this
because
is a
this
different
is
family.
correct,
Different
correct.
family. Yeah.
So, Dara is Baba's brother's, I mean, Baba's own brother's son.
Yes.
Ah, okay. All right. While my father was working in Nasik, he brought me to be with him whenever I had holidays from school. And I was taken there especially for the birthday celebration as well. The women Mandali had made Baba a white silk robe with gold and silver embroidery on it and a hand embroidered crown to wear. I remember how beautiful Baba looked, adorned with their gifts of love and bedecked from head to foot with fresh flowers. He was seated in a car and taken in a procession from the men's bungalow, the Meher Theatre. There, Padri, one of Baba's earliest men Mandri, who had been very involved in building the cinema, projected on the screen many beautiful still photographs that he had taken. Beloved Baba sat with us in the theatre. The majestic quality that shone from the close ups of his radiant face impressed me deeply, and I still remember the occasion vividly. Nasik holds great importance for me, as it was there in 1929 that I first met Baba's beloved Mehra and the other women Mandali. I don't remember anyone except Mehra and Naja, Baba's cousin. Mehra embraced me and took me into a room where a framed poem hung on the wall. I don't recall the poem as it was in English, and I understood very little of the language at that time. But she read it to me line by line and then explained it. I was deeply touched by the interest Mehra took in me. I was still young, and my interactions with Baba and his mandali were limited. But my father's diary of this time in Nasik describes this experience of living in Baba's ashram. I was summoned to Nasik in 1928 to carry out the construction work of a theatre which was to be erected by Rustum, elder brother of Sri Adi K. Irani. I was ordered to stay with Baba amongst his mandali at Gyaz Manzil before the commencement of the theatre work. Baba left Nasik for a few days, ordering me to stay there only. After his return, he went into seclusion in an enclosure on the first floor of the Gyaz Manzil. Ustadji attended to him, people came for his darshan throughout the seclusion period, and musical performances were held daily outside the enclosure. I was one of those fortunate ones ordered to take part in those musical programs, playing the harmonium, while Jal, Baba's brother, took part in singing songs. The theatre work commenced, and the whole construction work from the foundation to the roof was carried out with great help from Naval Talati and Padri. Baba had gone out of Nasik to different places several times during this period, and I had also changed 3 places of residence. The last and longest period was spent in the home of Dina Mai and Nawal Talati with Baba's permission. During the period I stayed in Nasik, I had to undergo a severe test of patience, endurance, and obedience at the hands of Baba. This caused me tremendous grief and mental strain due to Baba's displeasure. Often, he would give me contradictory and puzzling orders, and when these could not be fulfilled by me, he would take me to task. I was fully compensated by him when he invited me to participate in games, play carom with him, go for outings in Rustum's big bus to places of interest and for picnics. But the greatest joy was his loving company and sahwas. Before I came to live with the Talati family, I stayed for some time in a house with Baria Kaka and Baba's younger brother Adi in one room. There, I suffered for some days with severe colic due to dysentery and passed sleepless nights killing bugs by thousands all through the night, as the floor we slept on was infested. During the day, I had to attend to the work, and it was a terrible time I had to pass through. One day, I had to leave for some work in Bombay that Baba had given me several days ahead. I reached home to find that my father had passed away a few hours prior to my arrival, and a telegram had been sent to Baba to send Chanji and me to Bombay immediately. The telegram had reached Baba sometime after I had left Nasik. I was able to attend my father's funeral. I returned to Nasik after a few days and completed the construction of the theatre, which was inaugurated by the then collector of Nasik in the presence of a great number of government officials and other people. The theatre was named Meher Theatre after Baba. After a few days, I was ordered by Baba to leave Nasik for Bombay. So the father that she's that's being referred to in this diary is the grandfather, I think, who ate fish. I think it's clear from his diary that my father was receiving the full rigors of Baba's training. The time for me to experience the impact of Baba's direct orders on my life was yet to come. After our being in Nasik, I remember Baba bringing Mehra and the women to stay with us for a night in Bombay, but I have only hazy recollections of them. Then, in 1933, we had to move from the big apartment at Rustumbag as my uncle and aunt had decided they wanted a separate apartment and we could not afford to stay there by ourselves. We moved to the Dadar district to Banu Lodge, a big bungalow where we rented two rooms and a kitchen at the back that was separate from the main house. Our new quarters were not large enough to accommodate Baba and his mandali, but Baba's mother Shirin Mai and his brother Behram and wife Perin lived in a small cottage in the same compound. Fortunately, Baba sometimes stayed there so we could still go for his darshan and he would visit with us in our two rooms. Later, I realized that our home was practically opposite Manzil e Meen, the bungalow Baba had used for an ashram 10 years earlier. That's the 20s. A year after we moved into Banu Lodge, we received a letter from Baba telling us to vacate that apartment within 20 days. We never questioned Baba. We simply did as he said. In spite of the fact that 20 days was such a limited time in which to find suitable quarters, my father began the search immediately and finally managed to locate another apartment. January of 1934, we moved from Banu Lodge to Bowman Lodge, which was also in Dadar. While we were staying at Rustumbag, I had attended St. Teresa's convent for 7 years, but I had to leave that school when we came to live in Dadar as it was too far away. I completed my fifth standard at a new school. In the Indian educational system at that time, there were 4 years of primary education, followed by seven standards. After completing the seventh, a student would take a university examination to qualify for college. Languages were taught beginning in the fourth standard, and at St. Teresa's convent, I had studied French. However, however, the new school did not teach French, so I chose to study Persian as a second language. As I was starting Persian a year later than my classmates, I needed private tutoring to help me learn 2 years' work in one. It was in these classes that I first was I repeat that I repeat, it was in these classes that I was first exposed to the great Persian spiritual poets. When the tutor explained the works of Hafiz and Saadi to me, I became lost in a reverie. My teacher told my father that I was different from his other students in that I seemed to comprehend these highly spiritual poems and become immersed in them. In the midst of my everyday life, I would sometimes daydream of leading an ascetic life in the mountains. Just after I had passed my fifth standard in April of 1934, Baba visited our new home and gave me my first real experience of obedience. When he asked me my rank in school, I happily told him I stood first in the class. Baba seemed very pleased. Then he turned unexpectedly to my father and said, I don't want Arnawaz to continue with her studies. My father had high hopes for me as he believed in education and wanted me to finish school, to go to college and achieve academically. Naturally, he was quite taken aback by Baba's words. Father said, but Baba, before he could continue, Baba put his fingers on his lips, not allowing my father to say any more. Very firmly, Baba said, haven't you faith in me? Do what I tell you. Immediately, father said, yes, Baba, understanding that his order demanded strict obedience. Baba then turned to me and asked, will you do what I tell you? I replied, yes, Baba, even though I was deeply upset and wanted to continue my studies. I was only 16 and didn't know if I had the strength to do what Baba was asking of me. I wondered what I would do all day long in the house. When Baba saw the disappointment on my face, he said, you stay home for a year and then I will let you rejoin the school. Although my response wasn't from my heart, I said yes just to obey Baba. When he told me to quit school, I was still too young and raw to obey wholeheartedly. This was Baba's first strict order, beginning the training which would lead me finally to resign myself fully to his will. We have to start saying, yes, Baba, even if it's not from the heart. If we start that way, slowly and gradually, Meher Baba teaches us to obey him wholeheartedly without the reasoning of the mind. But that takes time. The next day, Baba again visited our home with Uncle Chanji, and we all had his darshan. Then Baba said to me, you and Nargis come with me and we'll go to a movie. How his love and compassion manifest in every little detail. I was so exhilarated at the prospect of going to a movie with Baba that I completely forgot my disappointment of the day before when he had given me the order to leave school. That afternoon was delightful. Not only did we get to watch a movie with Baba, but even better, we got to sit close to him for 2 hours. We were seated on a sofa, Baba in the middle, and Nergis and I either side. Movie was Mary Antoinette, the story of the last queen of France, who was guillotined. When the tragic moments came, I started weeping silently, and Baba tickled me on the side. I am very ticklish. I looked up at him and he asked, why are you crying? It's just a movie. At that time, movies seemed as real to me as life. When I laughed and enjoyed myself or cried in pain and sorrow, I was responding to what I felt. Only much later did I realize what Baba was implying in the theater that day. Our close contact with him gradually helped us to understand that life, like a movie, is all an illusion. But as a teenager, I found Baba's order to leave school a difficult one, as next to Baba and my family, school was the most important part of my life. To make the situation even harder, my principal did not want me to leave, as I was her prize student. She argued with my father, insisting that he was making a grave mistake in not allowing me to continue with my studies. She said that if it was a question of money, she would take care of it. My father kept saying that these were doctor's orders. What else could he do? He would say, she's not keeping well, and therefore the doctor wants her to stay at home for a year. The principal finally accepted this excuse because she knew I used to suffer from very severe headaches. But all the same time, she was disappointed and she asked if I could attend the following year. My father replied, I can't promise you, but we'll see. My principal, in order to give me an incentive to return, told me that if I studied at home for a year, she would give me a promotion to the next standard. Baba had made it very clear that I was to stay home. There was no one to help me with lessons, and I certainly couldn't continue with my studies, particularly difficult subjects like Persian and mathematics, all on my own. Besides, I didn't really believe that Baba would send me back to school. I thought he had given me that promise just to make the shock of staying home easier for me to bear. Consequently, I didn't do any reading or studying for the entire year. Stayed at home, cooking, sewing, and helping to tend the house, but found the routine tedious. All my friends were in school, so I rarely saw them, and I had no recreation because netball, badminton, and other games were played only at school. I couldn't go out just any time I wanted to, as in those days, young girls were strictly guarded. I was heartbroken, but now know, I know now that this experience began to weaken my attachment to having life the way I wanted it to be. My obedience to Baba's first order was a small step on a long journey that would gradually create detachment in me. And it is only through detachment that we can come to understand the illusory nature of life, to understand what beloved Baba meant when he said, everything is a big zero, but you don't feel that it is. It is all illusion and a dream. A. Gift of God, Chapter 3. When pure love is first received as a gift of the master, it becomes lodged in the consciousness of the aspirant like a seed in favorable soil, and in the course of time, the seed develops into a plant and then into a fully grown tree, a full grown tree. In Baba's quote, when pure love
Karthik, can I
is,
ask you to read it again, please?
I was already going to do that. When pure love is first received as a gift of the master, it becomes lodged in the consciousness of the aspirant like a seed in favorable soil. And in the course of time, the seed develops into a plant and then into a full grown tree. Baba. A year later, in April of 1935, Baba visited us again at our apartment. To my amazement, he asked me if I wanted to go back to finish my studies. I immediately answered yes. Baba knew how much I wanted to return to school and how important education was to my father. In his compassion, he allowed me to go back, though later I sensed that Baba had not been pleased with my answer. School didn't start for another 2 months, so I studied very hard with a tutor. Just prior to the beginning of the school year, my principal gave me the sixth standard test and said if I passed, she would allow me to go directly to the seventh and final standard, even though some teachers advised her not to take this risk. Then Baba put me through such a severe test that I wondered if I had made a mistake in being so eager to return. During the first month of school, my mind was so rusty that I just couldn't seem to learn anything, as though I didn't even know the English language. I hadn't opened a book, not even a novel, for a year. After 2 months, my English teacher, in despair, called me to talk with her. She didn't know how to help me keep up with the class. As the tears rolled down my cheeks, she comforted me, then suggested that I read 19th century novels by Charles Dickens and others for 5 hours daily, even though I didn't understand what I was reading. On the third novel, my previous knowledge of English suddenly returned, as well as my concentration. Studying became easier, and by the sixth month, I ranked as one of the top three students in class. I pause here for a minute to recount something that I went through, which was very similar. My father got transferred from uh, Bangalore to Calcutta, and for some vague reason, I don't remember the details, I had a missed year. So I did not study fourth standard at all in my life. And I was home most of the time. So this is exactly what Arnawaz is going through. But that was with Baba's order. I think I just lucked out by having a free year in between. But the good part is, when I went back, I think I did 2 months in Bangalore. Then we went through the transfer, and they didn't let me join the next class. But when I joined the next academic year, I was able to skip a class. So I've never done fourth standard. So pretty much like what she's going through, but she's done it much later in her school life. But I remember the same thing. I was out of touch of reading. I was out of touch of class. I never touched books. So it was a struggle to get back to the rhythm of school. And I it just came back to my memory.
Yeah, yeah. So that means you are the chosen one by Baba and take it as Baba's wish.
Yes, yeah. I don't know if there was anything spiritually relevant in that, but yeah, I I was reminded of this whole uh, episode. Let's continue. At the end of the school year, I appeared for my university matriculation exam. A week before the results were announced, Baba came to our house. He was very interested in my year at school and asked, "How have you fared in your exam?" I said, "Very well, Baba. I think I'll pass with high marks." Baba looked at me. "You will fail," he said, "and I want you to appear again, and then you will get through your exam." I was really taken aback. Despite what Baba had said, I still had some hope of passing, but when the results were announced, I had indeed failed. Then, for 7 days in succession, beloved Baba appeared in my dreams. One dream in particular stands out in my memory. The doorbell to our apartment at Bowman Lodge rang, and when I opened the door, Baba was standing there. He shone with such brilliance that he filled the whole apartment, 3 rooms, and the kitchen with light. After 4 months, I reappeared for the examination because Baba had told me to. I tried again, this time succeeding. The next time Baba visited us, I asked him about attending college since it was clear to me that he had taken charge of my schooling. He raised his hand and said, "You have studied so very much. Now it is enough. I don't want you to go to college." Wanting to help my family financially, I asked Baba if I should take a diploma class and become a teacher. "Yes, you can do that," he said. During that same time, my cousin, during that same time, my cousin Nariman, whom I had met only once in 1927, arrived in Bombay. He had attended college for 2 years in Karachi and had then gone to Banaras University to complete his BSc. As he stood first in his university, he was offered a scholarship to study either in the United States or in England. Nariman chose to go to Manchester, England, because the university there offered the best course in chemistry. He came to Bombay late in 1936 to make preliminary arrangements for his trip and get his passport. By this time, I was 18 years old and was getting acquainted with boys and men, although I still kept them at a distance. Nariman came to our house frequently during the few months he was in Bombay, and I enjoyed his company. Along with his distinguished academic achievements, he had been the captain of his university cricket team and was an excellent chess, tennis, and table tennis player as well. We got to know each other during group outings and at home, where we would sit and talk. As the eldest children in our respective families, we had much in common. We felt very deeply the hardships that our parents had suffered and often discussed our problems and experiences. Nariman, at the time when he left for England, and Nariman has taken this photograph, took this photo of me when I was 18. Nariman told me of the time he had spent with Baba in 1929 when he and the Mandali, including our uncle Chanji, had visited Karachi. Nariman and his maternal grandmother, along with his aunts and uncle, had gone to take Baba's darshan. Baba told Chanji to bring Nariman to be with him, and for 15 days, Nariman stayed in Baba's bungalow, leaving only to go to college each morning, as Baba was very particular about his studies. After this first intimate time with Baba, Nariman had no direct contact with him for 7 years, although a personal letter from Baba reveals the closeness of their relationship. And the letter is reproduced Mehrabad, Ahmednagar, 16th March 1934. My dear Nariman, Framrose gave me your letter and, as desired therein, asked me to dictate to you something from me. I want you to remember all I told you in Karachi, to be always pure in thought and action. I give you my love and blessing. Signed, M.S. Iran. Enclosed with Baba's letter was a note from Uncle Chanji emphasizing the importance of the letter. This letter from Baba, personally signed by himself, is a privilege to very, very few who are close to his heart and love. It is a message to you coming direct from him and should be considered and valued as so precious. You can scarcely imagine what it means. You will know it one day and then realize what every word of a direct and precious message like this means. And it brings you blessings untold. Keep it always at heart, Ambrose. After making his preliminary travel arrangements, Nariman returned to Karachi. So he was not in Nasik for the celebration of Baba's birthday in 1937. I accompanied my family along with hundreds of other Indian disciples and the Westerners who had come to India to be with Baba were staying at Meher Retreat. There are many pictures which Padri took of this glorious occasion. From morning until evening, beloved Baba gave darshan to more than 50,000 people, touching the feet of each one with his hand and then touching his forehead, which literally became black from the dirt on their feet. With the other hand, Baba gave prasad, and then a piece of cloth was given by one of the mandalis standing at his side. We felt exhausted just watching Baba. Again, I again pause here. I think this is the episode that comes in Wayfarers and the time matches, right? So 50,000 people with Baba doing the touching of their feet and giving them something. So we felt exhausted just watching Baba. We thought this effort put too much strain on him, but the capacities of the master are beyond anyone's grasp. In later years, as beloved Baba advanced in age, the intensity of his work actually increased. On that day, Baba sat among us as we had lunch sitting on the ground. His presence made it a beautiful sight, although it was funny watching his Western followers trying to eat food with their hands, Indian style, something that they had never done before. They tried to pick up the rice and dal as if it were a piece of cake. We returned to Bombay after the birthday celebration, and 3 months later, I began my secondary teacher's training course. I attended classes in theory in the evening and taught in a charitable school for Zoroastrian children during the day. This was a challenging assignment as the children attending the school were very poor, undernourished, insecure, and unruly. Fortunately, the school used to give them free lunches. For many, that was their only meal. Most of them were from broken homes and lacked discipline, so it was difficult to keep their attention. The other teachers used to cane them, but it was impossible for me to lift my hand against them, even though it seemed they needed this kind of discipline. These children had been so hardened by their environment that the love and kindness I gave them did not appear to affect them much. As I was beginning my training, Nariman returned to Bombay from Karachi, as would take him several months to arrange all the remaining details for his journey to England in September, and I was grateful for his companionship. Then, when it was just about time for him to leave for Manchester, he gave me some poems that he had been writing. In one, he spoke beautifully of love. Love is of the soul. Youth and beauty are the bridge of love, and the soul is the stream itself that washes shore and shore. In another, he confessed that I was the object of his love. O Arnabella, I can half perceive that I may speak my grief unto thy ear. If thou didst ever anything believe, believe how fondly I love thee, dear. Old fashioned, Sanjay would say. But Nariman also showed me the journal in which he kept his writing, and in one place he had written, "My love for this one is pure and simple. All I want now is a small, quiet corner in her heart where I can dwell peacefully till the last breath leaves this mortal frame." He'd even dedicated the journal to me. To the companion of my idle hours, to the soother of my sorrows, the confidant of my joys and hopes, my oldest and dearest. First letter of the alphabet, this little book I gratefully and affectionately dedicate. Although I enjoyed Nariman's company, I had no romantic inclinations and thought he understood that. We had discussed my study of the Persian poets, and he knew my spirit yearned for that love of God they spoke of so mysteriously. Nariman had accompanied me to movies which depicted the lives of Ram and Krishna and other stories with spiritual themes, and I had wept as I watched those who had renounced the world and lived only for God. My greatest desire was to live this type of single life, and I wanted simply to have Nariman as a friend. I knew he dreamed of returning to India once he had completed his studies to establish a business and help his family. In the tenderness of my young heart, I couldn't bear to dash his hopes completely, so I promised I would write to him while he was in Manchester. I feared my rejection of his love might disappoint him so much that he would abandon his dreams and not return. During those months, Nariman was in Bombay. He had the chance to take Baba's darshan often. At the same time, he was leaving for Manchester. Baba was making his last trip by steamer to the west, and this time he was taking Mehra and the other Eastern women, as well as Rano Gailey and Norina Machabelli, two of the Westerners. After Nariman arrived in England, he received word from Baba, who was then in Cannes, France, to join him there. Nariman had some free time before starting his graduate studies, so he was able to study with Baba in Cannes for 15 days. Sorry, so he was able to stay with Baba in Cannes for 15 days. Baba used this time, as he had in Karachi, to draw Nariman closer. Even though his contact with Baba in his early years was limited, Nariman had a very deep connection with him. We were to hear later what a love feast Baba gave those who were with him in Cannes. Just as a reminder, in Jane Adriel's book, we covered the Khan's stay and the visit, where Jane also was part of the stay. I too was soon to experience love when in February of 1938, Baba again celebrated his birthday on a grand scale, this time in Mehrabad. He called close ones from Bombay, Pune, Nagpur, and other centers. Gohar Irani, who later joined the ashram and became Baba's doctor, accompanied me to Mehrabad. She had been sent by Baba the year before to stay with my family while she was in medical school, and we have been very close friends ever since. Taking a leave of 4 days, we traveled by night train to avoid missing an extra day of school and joined my family, who left a day earlier. For the first time, I stayed on Mehrabad Hill with dear Mehra and the women Mandali in the ashram that Baba had established for them. When I came up the hill, Baba, who was sitting cross-legged on a big table in the kitchen, called me to him and embraced me. Mehra was standing nearby, and Baba turned to her and asked, "Mehra, do you know her?" Mehra replied, "Yes, Baba, she's Arnawaz." I was pleased that Mehra remembered me, as I had seen her only rarely. Baba then turned to me and asked, "Do you know her?" Pointing to Mehra. I said, "Yes, Baba, she's Mehra." Mehra looked very beautiful in a simple, plain white cotton sari with a green border. When I looked at her face, radiant with love for Baba, I was deeply touched and loved her immediately. At that moment, she carved a niche in my heart that has been there ever since. It was then that I understood the special position she had with Baba. Nobody ever explained it to me, nobody ever told me, not even Baba, but I knew. It was a natural understanding that came to me. Later, I realized the significance of this particular meeting. I was consciously awakening to my deep connection with Mehrab. At this point, we probably take a pause after seeing this photograph. So let's read the caption. At Meher Baba's birthday celebration on Mehrabad Hill, 1938, standing left to right, Khurshid, Nargis Mehra Mani, Khurshid, Nargis Mehra Mani, Katie and Arnawaz. So Katie and Arnawaz is here, and seated are Gohar, Mehru, and Silla. Okay, so interesting book. Good start. And we will continue the journey next Saturday.
Yeah, good that you could secure a digital copy of this book. That's what I
No, it's
was
there
wondering
on
last
the
time.
no, it's there on the website.
Okay. Okay. I have the hard copy. I never searched
Yeah,
for it.
yeah,
Yeah.
me too. I this was, by the way, one of the first books I read in MPR in Mehrabad.
Okay.
So
Okay.
of course it didn't
Very
leave
intimate
me.
accounts, so to say.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct, no doubt.
Same is with the
Okay.
book, which is He Gives the Ocean. That book, you know.
You have mentioned this before, yes.
Yeah, yeah. That's also very intimate and close account, private.
Yeah, I'm going to stop recording, but request you guys to stay for a minute.
We haven't heard